A very warm welcome, everyone. Good evening. And thank you for joining us for the 9th edition of the Knowledge Exchange. So the theme for this edition is Weaponising Social Media, Advent of the Keyboard Warriors. I'm Esther and I'm joined by my co-host, Elitha Simpson. And today we've actually got 4 guest panelists with us. And we'd like to ask you to please warmly welcome Dean Akai Sr., founder of AdPack, Carl Wilson, founder of Black Chat Social Network and the BlackNet Media Group. We also have Sean Pascal and Diane Reaney of Black Wall Street Media. Dean Akai Sr. is the founder of African Diaspora Public Affairs Committee, CIC, which came about after 27 years of business and advocacy through various organisations, starting when he joined Panther UK in May 1993. AdPack CIC exists to represent the African Caribbean population at a national level. Today, AdPack CIC works with a number of organisations, advocates and professionals to add value to, identify and establish institutions that serve every African Caribbean need specifically. Carlos Wilson is co-founder of Black Chat Social Network and the BlackNet Media Group. Carl has been involved with Black media on both radio and digital platforms for well over 20 years and is committed to supporting and encouraging true Black ownership. Black Wall Street Media aim to bring news of common interest to maintain unity as a global community in order to inspire and build. The concept of Black Wall Street Media is to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to uplift our community to greatness. So without any further delay, I want us to head straight into the first section, where we look at the role of social media within the Pan-African ambition. So the first question is, media has always played a defining role within advancing movements, specifically when we think of the Pan-African movement, we can look to the UNIA example of the Negro world. So how do we find that social media is different in its potential to affect a paradigm altering change, or is it? So I'm going to throw that question first to Diane, if I may. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Social media, interesting. I've been thinking about this question actually, because as we know, social media can be used in a very positive way and it can be used in a very negative way. I think in regards to Pan-Africanism, it's an interesting one because sometimes I feel social media connects us all. We can share a common goal and we can share experiences, and it's a really good teaching tool. But sometimes, if I'm being very honest, sometimes it can show division amongst us. And that division can be used with ulterior motives. I feel it is someone like ourselves at Black Wall Street Media and some of my fellow panelists, it's our responsibility when we're given a platform to use it constructively and to create an environment of cohesion, togetherness. And that doesn't mean that I always have to agree with everything that is put out there, but it is to come from a place of unity. We all know the saying, that sometimes I think certain things are raised to purposely cause division, and sometimes we lose sight of what the goal is. So I just think social media can be a really positive thing to connect us all globally and to share different experiences, especially across the pond. So I think it should be used positively. I think it can be used positively, and I think it is, but I am just aware that it can be used to cause division.
Thank you, Diane. And Dean, if I may, how do you think that it can be harnessed as a force for unity? Again, speaking from that Pan-African lens.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I think first and foremost, to address what social media actually is the democratization of opinion, and we will have them, which means that they're so vast and varied that whatever fills any of our minds will be distributed to the ether, and it has the ability to influence. So once we've set that aside, like my fellow panelists, it's very simple. It's about our agenda as custodians. And I do consider everybody on the panel custodians of the African Caribbean community. So once we're aware of that, we work with a great responsibility. I know that personally, I share every single person on the panel's entities widely and generously across my entire social media remit, which is LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, in the community section, and then Black Chat, Black Junction, I could name them. So once we have an idea of what we're tasked with as custodians, it is about bringing people together. And then it is about highlighting our commonalities. What are our key commonalities? And I talk about horizontal issues and vertical issues. We can always find division amongst our horizontal issues. I don't care for your sexuality, your religion, what you do in your bedroom. It's not my business. These are all horizontal issues. Our vertical issues, our children, education, our socioeconomic mobility, our community security. These are all vertical issues which align us. So when we speak from ADPAC, we only speak on our vertical issues because they align us as a community, and then we can find unity. Everything else is divisive, whether you like somebody, and I will tell you this much. As a man, I don't have to like you. It's not your fault that my spirit doesn't take to you. But we must get on if we are in a custodial position and then draw the people together. So as Pan-Africanists, I think we have to overcome our own personalities and understand that we've got a great responsibility when we're using social media to align our people for common interests, just like any other ethnicity, which is the only way that we're going to establish parity with every other ethnicity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Dean. Carl, I would like to offer that question to yourself as well. How is Black Chat as a platform being utilised to strengthen the efforts towards the nation building agenda?
Now, for us, everything that we've done, or everything that we're trying to do, is about ownership. It's people talking about social media. And I think that for me and my brother, because when I speak for me and my brother. And one of the things, when everybody talks about social media and people are talking about putting their information on Instagram, putting their information on Facebook and all of that, because of the length of time that we've been on the internet, we understand it inside out. That is us giving away our power. That is us giving away our information. That is, when you talk about weaponizing, we're giving away everything that we have to the owners of those social media. Yeah, that's what's happening. So it's you know, I've heard so many people talk, you know, everybody saying, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook. you know, and every time we do that, we just, you know, people are talking about recycling the black pound, and they're on Facebook talking about recycling the black pound. More of the black pounds going out through Facebook now more than ever. Yeah. You'll see the groups with 100,000 people or whatever amount of people, right? And talking about, yeah, you know, there are some people that's making money from those groups, don't get me wrong. But what they're doing, they're getting the data and the information on us. They're knowing how we live. They're knowing how to reach us. We're teaching them how to reach us. What Black Chat is trying to do is to say, look, this is about ownership. Before we can go anywhere, we need to own our own platforms. So we've got Black Chat as it is now, which is going to change anyway. That's the social media side of it. We've got Black Search, which is our equivalent to Google, our own search engine. We've got Black Vision, which is our version of YouTube, right? Because we believe for us as Black people to move forward, we have to work from our own platform. And that's what Black Chat is about. We see, we try and advertise, like, you know, Black Knowledge, we'll put your information up there. Dean, we'll put your information up there. That's what we're there for. We're there for our people to put their information there. That's what it's about. You go to our search engine, believe me, that's blacksearch.net. You go there, proper search engine, similar to Google, but we own it. But obviously, because we haven't got the finances, me and my brother have been financing all of this out of our own pocket. We've not asked nobody for nothing, yeah? Because we know. We said, if people want to come and support us, come and support us. I'll say that to everybody. You come and support us, join us, support us, and we'll support you back. But we're supposed to support each other. We don't even realize what power we have. But the only way we can work it is if we own our own thing. It's as simple as that. You know, we can do, as I said, I'm fed up. I tell everybody, when I get into meetings, I get kicked out because I will talk it as it is. Yeah. You understand? Right? As far as I'm concerned, we can talk until the cows come home. It's about action. We work together. Everybody's going to work together. Let's get together and really work together. But first, we need to know everything that's out there.
And I think what you say, Brother Carl, about ownership is obviously a very central point. But I think in terms of when we look at the landscape of our community and the range and the diversity that exists within that community, how do we begin to encourage the community at large? Because it has to be ultimately about the numbers, and therefore it means that it's about the mainstream. So how do we begin to persuade the mainstream about this philosophy, essentially, that you're sharing about ownership and about our power, and the fact that we're giving away our power? You know, how do we begin to sort of, I suppose, erode and begin to convert the mainstream?
We need to, this is just my opinion. Remember, I'm only talking I can't speak for everybody.
Absolutely.
I just speak the way I see it. Yeah. Dean speaks, you know, we all speak the way. But for me, the first thing we have to do is to come together. Forget all of the people them on there, people who want to do things. We need to, like Dean said, forget the egos. It's not about the ego people them. I see people going out telling people all of this out there. They're going out and talking to the community before they get their house in order. Do you understand? We need to get whatever people's going to manage, whatever people's going to come forward and represent the Black community. First of all, we need to talk to us together. We need to talk on this level. You see everybody that's tuning in right now, these guests, that's fine, they can watch. But we need to talk. I need to talk with Sean. I need to talk with Dean. Dean, you need to talk to me. Sean, you need to talk to me. How can we work together? We need to, how do we do it?
Yeah.
We've got to be talking like that first.
Sorry,
let me shut up, because once I get started.
No, all worth hearing and very much worth saying and sharing. So thank you very much for that, Brother Carl. And it sounds as though from what you're saying is that actually there's a step before we start actually positioning ourselves in this media social media scape that needs to happen. So I think that's quite a key point there, because I think unless the education is there in terms of how to use these tools as weapons, we could actually end up finding ourselves accidentally discharging on one another.
Let me explain this to you, right? Because I don't want to take up too much time.
Very quickly, and then I'll let Sean.
Right. The thing is, you've got to understand that social media out there, the names of the, Facebook, all of them, they control it.
Yeah.
Right? They control it. So when you're talking about what you're doing on there, forget it. They control it, and that's why I talk the way I talk. What you got to know, we can't talk about anything to do with social media when it comes to Facebook and that, because they control whatever they want to happen, happens.
I wonder if that would be something that is just an inevitability, given the nature of the platform. I don't know if it's something that, as Black Chat, soon to be known by another name, will be approaching differently. So
yeah, we're not. Our thing, you see, they're dealing with algorithms, and their algorithms are in place to benefit them and to control. And this is from a political level, financial level, all it's in place. So their algorithms, they set it, and so when sometimes they get it wrong and people find out, or when people start moaning, then they'll change it a bit to say, oh yes, we address this, you understand? But the fact is, they control it. We're not dealing with algorithms like that on Black Chat. Black Chat is, it's about sharing your information, and that's it. It's not about algorithms.
Let me bring in Sean to have the final word on this particular question before we move on. Sean, good evening.
Hi, good evening. My view is I've seen social media has played a big part, certainly with the Black Lives Matter protests last year, and it's played a huge part in how we organize ourselves and move forward. It gives the underrepresented a voice. So it can be used as a positive tool, and for me, I try and focus on that, because if I start letting negativity creep in, it's going to hold me back. And it's very important that when we put information out there, we think about how it's going to impact that person. And for me, I'm always thinking like that when I put a post out, because I want people to be able to have rich connections with one another, and be inspired by some of the things they see. And some of the stories aren't always happy stories, but there's a story in there about how this person has overcome and carried on. So since the beginning of time, we've been indoctrinated with a certain mindset. And we need to move away from that. We need to reboot our brains. And for me, social media has allowed me certainly to be in a position where I can influence that change that I need to see, because I'm never going to be in a position where, well, I'm not going to say never. It's difficult to be in a position where you can own your own radio station, your own TV station. Whereas now we've got social media, so anyone can do it. But you're right, it's about doing it in a responsible and measured way.
Thank you, Sean. And one thing that I do wonder, and it is something that we'll come back to actually in section 2, which is about accountability in the virtual space. But one thing I do wonder, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Brother Carl, is, are we too far down the line to necessarily begin thinking about the steps that come before the use of the social media space, because it's already here. So I suppose it's now about what do we do with it, essentially. And I think, Sean, your point speaks very well to that, in terms of us actually using it positively for the purpose of the education that you're referring to, Brother Carl. You know, so it's about maximizing the space, the opportunity to that end. I think that shouldn't be neglected. So just to move on to the second question within this section, how should we as stakeholders understand the social media space? So I'll throw that to Dean to start with, please.
Thank you. I think as stakeholders, we have to do a mapping exercise. I think the first thing we have to actually put in place is, what do we want to acquire? So once we've done a mapping exercise of our own community, and in my own example, that's a 5-year mapping exercise, being in maybe 140 WhatsApp groups, similarly the same amount of Facebook groups and every other social media, to quantify what is our temperature, what are our capabilities, what do we lack, what do we need, what is our psychological common thread in terms of we regurgitate the same stuff. So you'll see a social media video from 5 years ago and people are talking about it as if it's brand new because it's relevant. So before we start to negotiate the landscape of what entities are there, because like money, like a kettle that you can boil water to make a cup of tea or to burn a baby, they're only tools. Now, tools have as much power as the sophisticated understanding that you have of them. So although I will feed my personal liabilities, I understand I make that sacrifice for the awareness of my people to know who is coming to purport to speak for you, that there is nothing in the closet. It's not everybody that I recommend does that. I recommend that people, like Carl says, retain their personal information because it is highly, highly valuable. Data is going to remain for perpetuity. It cannot be deleted. It is not going anywhere. And I'll tell you this much. The entire DNA of our spiritual, social, sexual, ideological, or any other component of our lives is absolutely understood by Europeans to the minutiae because we've offered it all up for free. There is no mystery about any African on God's green earth. And another thing, and herein lies the problem, we are a very predictable people. So be aware that we are very predictable, highly repetitious in our habits, and fully understood. So when I speak to the custodians and I say it's a great responsibility, people might underestimate my understanding of what it means when I call somebody a custodian. And secondly, when I say it's a great responsibility, I know that they know us to our DNA through our sexual predilections, our social ideals, our aspirations. They've got the whole thing mapped. And do you know how I know? Because I have the whole thing mapped, or I would not be qualified to play the role that I play in ADPAC. So when I see Carl's raw response to our naivety in offering up our entire DNA, I get it. It is about understanding the nefarious nature of the beast that we are dealing with, that we are sharing secrets that we wouldn't share with people we don't even like. So we've been very naive as to the social modification software that social media is. We're not even by and large aware that social media is just social engineering software. So now we as the custodians must become the algorithm of our community. And the key that Carla's touched on, the conversations me and Sean have had, is that when you see somebody pop up and put their head above the parapet, reach out to them, offer them your assistance, align where you can, and understand their absolute role within the matrix of roles for the solutions for our community. And that is the way that ADPAC move forward. It's the way that I personally move forward. and is my understanding of the panel members that I've had relations with in terms of conversation over the last 6 months, year, or 5 years.
Thank you, Dean. And of course, it always needs to be about progress and moving forward. How do we do that, Diane? How do we begin to move forward?
What Carl has said, what Dean has said, and Sean, it's about that collaboration. And that's why with a platform like Black Wall Street Media, yes, we use social media to create and harness and share and educate. But then that's hoping to bring them onto a platform where it's that we, the community, own it. We have shares in it. We can then dictate what we then put out there. Because too often, social media talks for us. Whereas a platform like Black Wall Street Media, it's about us speaking for ourselves. Because our data is our data. People are going to use it. It's a very, very powerful thing. But it's about us also collating that data for ourselves, working collaboratively and using that data for a better purpose. And that's then to create your own platforms like Carl, like Dean, like Black Wall Street Media. It's then a place, it's just to me the first stepping stone to create our own platforms that we then can own. Because, you know, I'm a journalist. I've been working in this area for 3 decades. And it's like, if you look at the traditional style of media, when we used to have, you know, your The Voice, which is still there, and whether you like it or not, it used to be something that we owned. And I think it's the same thing can happen in the digital space. And that's what I think it is about, that collaboration. Once we get people to come onto our platforms, we then can use those platforms to what we ultimately own and want to see, and own the data and own our own algorithms. And that to me is the way forward. It's a tool to be used to get the outcome that we want to achieve for our community.
And I think we've seen 2 prominent examples of that in the BLM movement, despite what your opinions may be of their ideology and their political position. I think also with the Me Too movement as well, we've seen great successes, you know, and I put that term success in inverted commas, in terms of just how powerful social media has been in galvanizing and actually engaging the disenfranchised, because I think we see the extent to which our community are now a lot more acutely aware and engaged in socio-political issues, and are actually participating in that change. Carl, did you have anything that you wanted to say on this question in terms of how we as stakeholders understand?
Cool. For me, as I said, it is about ownership, and it's about us working together, which is key. And what I believe that, I think it's important to say this. I believe that we need to use Facebook. We need to use Instagram. We need to use all of those things. I do. But we have to understand how to use it as marketing tools. Do you see what I'm saying? As marketing tools. I don't believe we should be creating groups on there that represent us, if that makes sense. Yeah, right. I think it's important because what's happening, you know, our social thing is a bit like Facebook, if you understand, right? It's a bit like Facebook, and like I said, even the search engine is a bit like Google. Obviously, we haven't got all the money they've got. We're doing the best we can, and as the more people that we get, the more, you know, the more it'll have value. But my point is, what we're trying to do with Black Chat and where we're coming from, and I think even like the Black Wall Street Media is saying, what you're saying there is right. I think, but what people don't realize, you know, if all the Black people all at one time exited Facebook, Instagram, right? All of them places, we'd have the power. But they're dealing with their algorithms, they're dealing with psychology. I mean, I've listened to people, ex-employees, and they talk about how they contact not just us as a community, other communities as well. They're dividing up all the different communities. A lot of them, the Jewish community and various other communities, they're escaping. The Chinese, as you know, they won't get involved because they're taking control. What I'm saying, for us, as I keep saying, the only way we can do it is when we talk about social media, you've got social media, the Facebook and all of that. But if we're going to do our own social media, we need to recognize it. And I used to say to people, I'd say to people on the Black Chat, and remember, we're going to change the name. Whatever you post on Facebook, I used to say, just post it on Black Chat as well. Whatever you post on Facebook, post it on Black Chat. You can create groups on Black Chat, just like you can create it on Facebook, right? So when you're creating Black movement groups on Facebook, what are you doing? You're teaching them about our problems and how to access us.
Absolutely. And I think you're right to be impassioned, Brother Carl.
Sorry, I told you that before. Yeah.
and rightly so. And I think you've dropped a lot of really useful, practical information here that people can now go on to use to inform their future decision making on these platforms, which is fantastic. So thank you so much for that. Probably just to consolidate this particular section to say that the mapping is critical here, because what we're hearing is that there are so many, a vast amount of organizations that exist that are doing great things, great works to nation build. But what's happening is that there isn't a central sort of holding ground that allows us to actually come together for our good. So let me move on to section 2, which is accountability in the virtual space. So we see a wanton ubiquity of so many self-appointed leaders and mouthpieces of the Black community who express views and make demands and simply seek to capitalize on the political weather. But how do we hold these characters to account when they are potentially leading our people in the wrong direction? Because it's all good and well us saying that we need to band together, but there also needs to be with that a level of accountability that ensure that we are actually safeguarding what is being built. So I'll start with Sean on that, please.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something I've come across on numerous occasions. And the way I have responded really as it has been to stay focused on what I'm doing and not retaliate to anything that they may do to me, and to keep my integrity and to keep pushing on. And what I found by doing that is that the truth always comes out in the end, and people will wake up at some point and start to gravitate towards the truth. So, you know, you know, there's a lot of people that have been going around pretending like they know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying I do, but I have certainly taken the time out to learn about myself, learn about my history, and learn about our struggles. And I'm always keen to share that with people. And yeah, it's just by doing that, I've been able to hopefully deter people away from those sorts of people, and get them on a more cohesive track. So, and yeah, and social media has played an awful big part in all of that. So that's how I've responded.
Thank you, Sean. Dean, how do we hold those to account who essentially are preying on people's vulnerability at this time, who are preying on our community's vulnerability, and luring them in with information that essentially could actually cost the community a great deal?
Understand is that the landscape has been democratized by social media, in that everybody's mouth, and that has the ability to irritate and bite. Now, if you're in a room with a tiny insect, as tiny as it has the ability to irritate, bite, and infect. So I don't think that accountability is a personal issue, nor should it be, which is why AdPac designed the We Matter campaign, which is very separate from the We Matter party. Don't get it twisted. The names are aligned because I want that ability to hold accountability in people's subconscious mind. So they are aligned. But the We Matter campaign is a 2-minute video campaign where we have hundreds of influencers on one particular issue. So it could be a racist attack in our community. It could be somebody from inside, such as any of the Conservative MPs who are carrying the water of racists to maintain the structural inequality that we've known for the past 72 years in the UK. It could be one of our initiatives that's fantastic and holding that to account. But what it is that we aren't a monolith as a people. There are 3 million of us. We have at least 100 tribes within that 3 million. And when you go across a broad section of social commentators, what you're getting is a fully rounded perspective that's nuanced. So when you release those 2-minute videos as a thunderclap, which is when I first designed that campaign, the first thing I did was reach out to Carl and let him know the whole thing. Can we create a page that releases these videos, that lets our people have awareness of what this thing is? And that's ahead of any other social media, because Carl is my brother. I don't need to eat food in Carl's house to know his heart. I was as naked as Carl. But what happened was when I was speaking, I may lose part of our people because they're not my tribe. So I make myself as vanilla as possible so that it just brings as many tribes as possible so we can align under one banner. But how we hold each other accountable is very easy. So just envisage this: 100 to 200 videos, slightly nuanced perspectives, criticizing the same person, the same institution, day, date, and hour, all shot in a studio, high production values with the same branding. Now, we've never been that organized at any time in history, and we coordinate that with all of our press and media-owned outlets. So although I haven't spoken to Diane about it, I have spoken to Sean about it as being a delivery partner, and I've spoken to you, Esther, about it in aligning with the We Matter campaign and Black Ballad and all of these other media. So when we get somebody, we rein them in a very coordinated fashion that we've never executed at any stage in history, because we must be held accountable, and we must be held accountable to all tribes, not the cool gang that we belong to, because we've got to get out of, when it comes to being custodians, we must leave behind this thing of our tiny tribe. Because my tribe, drink rum, we can be quite coarse. I spent the first 30 years in South London. That's irrelevant to my position as acting chair in AdPac. All tribes must be represented, bar none, as African Caribbeans.
Thank you, Dean. And just to respect our time, I'm going to go straight to Carl. Carl, if you could give us literally just a couple of minutes on this.
You know me already. The accountability side of it, I think for me, again, I think that I'm trying to, in my head, I'm saying that who are we looking to hold accountable, if you see what I'm saying? My mind is as I said, my mind is just on the people. I think that we need, as I said, we need to be building, you know, we need to build our infrastructure and put things in place. And I think that it's then we'll know who we need to, who we need to, you know, make accountable for whatever they do. But before we do that, we've got to have something to be able to make them accountable. We've got to have a group, we've got to have something in place. Right now, we haven't got much. So, you know, I can't say that we can make anybody accountable right now. Right? That's where I come from. I'm just saying, you know, if we must first organize ourselves. I gotta keep saying that we first gotta come together before we can ask or make anybody accountable for anything. Because we can talk, we can say that we should, but we don't say how we're gonna do it.
I think we could probably point to examples of resistance, i.e. Trying to hold individuals, institutions, systems to account that we've seen via social media, have been pushed by Black-led or Black-fronted organisations. I just wonder where we now have a groundswell, I would say now, of the community who are probably very new and in their infancy when it comes to this whole consciousness ideology. How do we protect them, I suppose, from the dangers that exist, but even within our own community specifically is what I'm talking about. By holding those individuals to account, because what we don't want to do is to actually have this opportunity wasted, you know, or have this opportunity lost to continue to move.
I think, but you see, again, there are quite a few people that's out there within our community that I think is leading people down the wrong road. Yeah, absolutely. Right, absolutely. But again, and I think this is what I'm trying to say. Social media works for a lot of people, but it only works. I keep saying this. It only works in the way that Facebook wants it to work. So what will happen? There'll be people who are leading our community down the wrong road, and they'll be telling them do this, do that, and go down here. And the social media, the way the algorithms and anything, the way it works, it'll support that. Do you see what I'm saying? So more people will see that information. This is what a lot of people don't realize. When you say that there's a lot of, since the death of George Floyd and what happened with the Black Lives movement and the campaign on Facebook, that was absolutely fantastic. And for the first 7 or 8 months, everything was good. There was black movements going. But if you sit back, you will actually realize that half of the information that would have created some form of activity nowadays that we're sharing, it's not being shared. It's been suppressed by Facebook, right? The whole thing's being controlled, but people still believe that we still got that same movement we have in our hearts, but it's not happening in the social media thing. They're actually dividing us more and more now. They're even controlling how people can access the groups that you've built. They're doing all of this. And this is what I keep saying to people. I'll have to keep saying, before we go anywhere or do anything, we need to have and support our own platforms. I tell people we have to work as well with the generations. We have to work together. Facebook's trying to separate all the generations, right? You have to build, we have to build, like, I'm a generation above you, or maybe even 2 generations above you. Do you understand? But I have experience and I can help you. Do you understand? I can support you. We got our own servers. We develop things. We develop web. You know, most of the money that we get is developing websites, high-end websites for white man. That's how we're paying for what we're doing, right? Half the black people, they don't want to. When we tell them, look, we do things proper. We develop our websites. We can do the coding. We do everything. black man don't want to pay us, they prefer to pay the Indian man or the white man. But we know that because we also know there are a few black men that come and they put down 3 grand one time, I want you to build this for me car. Do you see what I'm saying? Those people, once we start getting together, we need the right people first. The rest of our community will follow after. But leaders have to lead.
I noticed that you had your hand up. Did you want to share something on this note very finally before we move on?
Yeah, just 2 things. I think it's important to meet people where they are in terms of their mindset, and you know, and don't hold that against them. In addition to that, I think you can talk to someone till you're blue in the face, and know that you know what you're talking about. But I think it's important to make sure we hold ourselves accountable as individuals to, you know, to do the best that we can do and keep working on ourselves. And, you know, the way I have been able to change mindsets is by showing them the right way of doing something. And slowly those non-believers have caught up. And, you know, so for me, that's the way to really hold people accountable. And that's how I've done it in the past. It's just by showing them is the best way.
Absolutely. Otherwise, and I did say this in the last thing actually, it's almost like putting the cart before the horse, and just expecting that if we build it, they will come. And I think that notion is somewhat misguided. But yeah, thank you for that, because that's a very, very important point. And again, it kind of loops back to what Carl was saying about not necessarily saying that you have to jettison all of these sort of mainstream social media platforms, because that's not the idea. It's about how you use these tools, as you've all said at different points. So thank you very much. The last question of this section is, how damaging are Black excellence campaigns that inadvertently perpetuate the narrow characterizations of the Black body? Now, by this, I'm talking about the campaigns that we see where we are playing up to a lot of the tropes and the stereotypes, specifically the sort of dance-offs and the dance battles. I know that there's a place for that, but I also feel that we shouldn't necessarily cast ourselves so narrowly and in such a sort of singular dimension, especially when we're thinking about breaking a lot of these stereotypes, for us to actually be able to free ourselves ultimately, and understand the diversity and the pluralism of our identity. So let me first ask that to Diane.
I suppose it's some of those images that I believe you're referring to may show sides of our culture and stuff like that, but I don't necessarily see, if I personally put them in the same place as Black excellence. Do you know what I mean? I just see it as something that what someone wants to share in what shows part of culture, or but I may not see it as Black excellence, because to me Black excellence is everybody on this panel, you know. Black excellence to me is they're all quite positive stuff. So if my twin girls was to see a video which I would assign with Black excellence, those kind of videos, what you're referring to, I wouldn't put them in the same, even in the same bracket. So it's hard for me to understand or give an opinion, because I don't have one in regards to that, because I don't see them in that same context, if I'm being honest, because I think there are a lot of, but if we go back to what Carl says about algorithms, I mean, I run a marketing and media company and have done. I understand algorithms, and it's interesting, if I post something that is what I would consider Black excellence, you by the algorithm, sometimes people who follow you don't even get to see that. You know, they are very good. I mean, I recently wrote a very, very controversial piece on on media and journalism and how it demonizes Black people. And I didn't, you know, pull any punches. I just said it how it is. We all know what goes on. And that piece was only seen by a very limited amount of people. Was it done deliberately? Of course it was. I know this, yeah. But that's why I said that's why it's important to push Black excellence through our own channels. And it is being aware of those kinds of things. And it is like when people talk about certain videos, I had a conversation with someone about certain videos, it was about gangs, and I was like, same old, if you keep pushing those things, that they have an agenda. They will push those out so that people begin to believe that this is all that we as Black people represent. So it's just being aware of what you're doing and what we're pushing out there. And so for me, I just think there's an agenda. We know the agenda's there. Well, I know the agenda's there. And it's about educating people who may not know that there's an agenda, and using the platforms like Carl's, like Dean's, like ourselves, to push videos which I believe are Black excellence, and not those ones which can be stereotyped to suit their own agenda.
Absolutely, and I think you've answered that, Diane, very comprehensively, and with as much detail as I would have hoped. So thank you for that, because I think the Black excellence stamp, especially when you're looking at hashtags, because that's what it is. It's a hashtag that's applied as Black excellence, and bearing in mind everything that's been said by Carl, by Dean, about how these platforms are very, very selective and manipulative using these algorithms. You know, the point is that we know that our people are very susceptible and very vulnerable to this push, you know, to kind of position us in this way. So I think it's very, very important to understand that these videos that are being pushed out there aren't necessarily all that they appear to be, you know. And for that reason can be very dangerous, for the precise reason that you said, Diane, is that they limit the definition of Black excellence. And what that is doing psychologically is, I suppose, what my interest is with this particular question. What is it doing to us psychologically if all that is being fed through? Because it is a filtering system after all. You know, if all that is being pushed through, because when you see the number of likes and so on and so forth that actually correspond to these videos, compared with what Sean, for example, on Black Wall Street Media would post in an example that I believe is absolutely Black excellence. It is very, very telling. I think it actually gives us a very, very good indicator of where we are, you know, that temperature check, Dean, that you were saying, in terms of what we recognize ourselves as, the self-esteem and value, and where we place that value, you know. So Dean.
But sorry, I don't mean to cut you, but it's also our responsibility, because for me, when these videos, which are in my opinion not Black excellence, it is, I mean, I was on a call recently with some young black people who do videos and stuff, and we were talking about a storyline. It was really interesting. The storyline that one particular young Black person wanted to push was very positive, yeah, even though it was this, you know, a young person who was potentially on the line, could go into gang life, and they wanted to be really positive, that actually they were a good student, and, you know, they come from a good family, 2 parents, all these kinds of things. But what one of the majority was saying was, nah, that's not reality. It's, you know, and they wanted to push the same narrative because that's what they've been brainwashed to believe, that is the best, that you know, it's, you know, you can't beat it if you can't see it.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's why I think it's our responsibility, because why do they get so many likes? What does that say about ourselves? What does it say about George Floyd? I said to people, I stopped watching that video because for me, who's a professional in that area, the constant trauma and what it can do to you and your identity and about where you are, where you may be, like Sean says, where you are in that particular time is really important. So, but I think that comes with education. It comes with education, and it comes from the custodials, people like us, to change that narrative.
Dean, if you could.
I'm going to be succinct because I can be horrible with the time. God bless everyone. So to put it in a nutshell, I absolutely concur with Han. And what I will say is this. Sean hit the nail on the head. You've got to meet people where they are. We have a project right now, which I've sent to both you, Esther, and Sean, which is about male integrity. It's a music project, and I'm going to send it to you, Carl, as well, because you're a key delivery partner. It's a music project, which is a national music project about male integrity. But outside of the music component, the We Matter campaign is actually recording those 2-minute videos with all of the male influencers, social commentators, and professionals in our community to back it up, speaking about their personal integrity. So we released the thunderclap of the music project, where we're talking to corporate social responsibility funding partners so they can enable us to enable our young men and women to create a better society, because we want to turn them away from serious youth violence and adjust their values to community inclusion. So, but we need partnerships for that. And that's where we talk about aligning with allies. So not only those, but then sports clothing, branding, partnerships, who would also fund and then fund the dancers within that project. Now, all of the people involved in the project will have no idea what the wider project is, definitely not what the title is, but it is about male integrity. So when we as custodians have a particular will, it will be executed. Now, the people involved don't have to know the finer details. And if you cast your mind back to when you heard Fight the Power, 1989, Public Enemy, it put the hairs on the back of your neck up. So with one rhythm, maybe 10 to 20 artists, I've got 9 at the moment, but that might turn into 20, all on the same rhythm. But how do we get the young people? From the CSR program, we put up a £5,000 reward for you to make your version of that male integrity project on TikTok and all of the media that young people go to. But the key is that we as delivery partners and custodians are all on the same page. So when we talk about Black excellence, it's a term that's bandied around like any other. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean any more than black. So we don't get too upset about that. But when we know what we're working with, we know how to maneuver. Black excellence is everything that we demonstrate where we are operating at the highest echelons in any particular industry, which is what Dehan was saying. But when our terms are co-opted, this is very important that we work with a delivery partner like Black Chat, because now we are also recording somebody who will not restrict our media alongside those who will, which is why if all my social media gets stripped down by Europeans, my Black Chat is full. Everything I post on LinkedIn, Facebook, or anything else, I put on Black Chat 7 days a week. And I put it on Black Junction 7 days a week. Dr. Boyce Watkins platform, Black Enough, 7 days a week. So you can't kill any AdPack content dead.
So how do you safeguard your mental well-being from the environment that is the online world? And I think this is more for the benefit of our community, if anything, because it's very easy to end up down a sort of rabbit warren with a lot of the stuff that goes on that is very, very unhealthy for the mental sort of appetite. And when we need to sort of steer clear of that so we don't end up jaded and faded with a lot of what we see and find ourselves just moving away completely from the work that needs to be done. So I'm going to first of all point that question to Sean, if I may.
It's a really good question. I've thought about that today. You know, I spend an awful lot of time on social media, and sharing all these posts and things, and it takes away a lot of time from my family and from myself. And you know, there's times when I feel my head's going to explode because my eyes are just stuck to that screen for so long, and I'm reading all this material, and it can have an adverse effect on you in terms of your health and well-being, because some of it can be quite negative, although there's lessons to be learned. And for me, you know, when I get to that stage, I just know it's time to just put that phone or laptop down and just totally switch off, walk away, and find another outlet, you know, even if it's sitting down reading a book or something. So it's knowing when to disengage, because like anything, it has to be in moderation.
Dean, can I pose this question to you? How do you safeguard your mental well-being?
Absolutely. If you phone me before 10 o'clock, it is highly unlikely that you'll get me, because me and my missus will have a morning meditation to ground ourselves and then pray together, which is how we start the day, in grounding. So I actually had this conversation with Sean, I think it was maybe Wednesday or Thursday. And whenever I see anybody jump into this position as custodians, the first thing I do is reach out to them and have a conversation about protecting themselves. So me and Sean had that conversation about 40 minutes on Thursday. And when we look at what can happen to young people who are highly naive, who are going to get utilized by people for their spiritual energy, for their ability to gather people, you don't have to look at any further than Sasha Johnson. So I put a strategic voice note and a message in a group, which she was in, knowing that she would reach out to me, which she did. And I said I would mentor her. Due to all of the forces around her, these things may not happen at the key time. And unfortunately, we didn't get to connect other than a few WhatsApp messages. But the funny thing is, when I came back from the demonstration outside City Hall on Friday, I offered her the same mentoring again. And I said, when she gets up, and I warned her about spiritually who is around her. And I did say it was inevitable that something would happen to her where she has put herself in the spotlight based on all the spiritual energy, which is negative, which doesn't dissipate. So when you talk about spirituality now we're talking about our African spirituality. I'm not a Christian, Muslim, or a Jew, and whatever people's faiths are, I respect, but I'm now just talking about energy which doesn't dissipate. When enough people have a negative energy for you, you must learn to spiritually protect yourself. And as I said, me and Sean have had this conversation. Esther, me and you have had this conversation. And I do have that conversation because I know how to protect myself, and I know how to move, when to move, what to say, and when to say it. So when I speak to the custodians, there is stuff that comes with that. And I offer that to the masses in a slightly more diluted way because they have a different role. But the tenets of it remain exactly the same. Learn to, and Carl knows, that's why he's nothing. Learn to protect your spirit outside of everything else. Have a relationship with your ancestors and the co-creator that protects you from everything in a highly intentional way. I don't want to take up too much time, but it's such an important point. Your spirit reflects your psychological standpoint. So when you see people who are referred to as mad, it's more spiritual than anything else.
Thank you, Dean. And that for me is very much in line with the point that we covered in the editorial for the family edition, that as above, so below, essentially. So we must look after that spiritual component so that we are actually fit to take the necessary disciplined steps when using social media and just acting generally as beings in this natural environment. So I'm going to ask Carl if you could very quickly also enlighten us in terms of how you take care of your mental health and well-being.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay. So where I come from, I deal with my subconscious. My subconscious mind is you know, I'm very in touch with and believe that, you know, everything that is comes from your subconscious, you know, and I believe that your conscious mind, you know, you have to look at the positive in everything, and that's what I try to do, you know what I mean? And I think understanding that my outcomes are based on my conscious mind and the way that it sees things. I think that's what keeps me sane in most of the things that I do, because I believe that you define where you go in life, you define what you do. You understand what I'm saying? So, and I tell my kids them that, and a lot of them, for example, they don't even bother. They won't bother with Facebook. They'll go on there. They might put something up there once and they're off there. You know what I mean? And most of my family have that kind of mindset where we control things. We don't let things control us, if you see what I'm saying. And so I don't have a problem with the kind of, or have any fear of having any mental problem in using social media, because, as I said, we don't let that control. I don't let that control me. You know. So that's it.
Thank you, Diane. I do want to get your take on this as well, if you could.
I have a good support system. Like Dean, I meditate. I really take time just to exhale. But what sometimes happens, and I think whether it's social media, whether it's meetings, whatever, is recently I had an incident where it was the tiny microaggressions which exist, and they just can chip away, and sometimes you don't even realize you're so doing what you want to do, you know, do the best for of what you're doing, that you don't realize sometimes that you just have to take a breath. And for me last week, I just sat down. I think I said to Sean, I said, I had to really just exhale, because sometimes you can be protected, but you need that tribe, the people that you can share. You can just, as I call it, vomit, vomit out what's happening, and get rid of all that positive and negative energy that sometimes can seep in when you least expect it. But for me, it's about that meditation, grounding, and having my tribe around me that supports me in that, and having that space to vomit, to be honest with you.
So finally, I do want to cover this last question, and then we'll go straight into the question and answers from the community. What does it mean to be on code, so to operate on code, and what do you understand to be its value in the virtual space? So I'm going to ask Carl to start us off with that one.
For me, as I said, you know, I've never heard that term, so it's new. I'll be using that tomorrow to somebody, I'm sure. You know what I mean? But for me, as I keep saying, I mean, if we, you know, we just need to be working together, coming together. We need to be supporting each other, and keep saying the same thing, because, and I got to be clear here, I've been to so many meetings, and all that's happened is people have talked. Do you see what I'm saying? A meeting after meeting, and people just talk. So I got to keep saying, and I think this is wonderful. This whole thing is wonderful. But for me, I haven't got a clue what you know, this code thing you're talking about. I haven't got a clue, right? But I say this: it's important for us as people, and anybody that's listening right now, we need to just be supporting. Not saying that we're supporting, and I'm talking about supporting people, like I said, Sean's thing and your Black knowledge thing. We need to kind of put aside the Facebook and thing, do you understand? And work out how we're going to support your Black knowledge and all the other Black things, but just take it away, because this is about weaponizing social media. That's what it's about, yeah? So in order to finish this, the only way we can weaponize social media is if we control it, if we own it. Otherwise, we're working, somebody else is weaponizing against us. So I'll finish there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you again for those very practical, salient points, Carl. Sean, I think we appear to have lost Dean for now. Sean, are you able to pick up on that point?
Yeah, I mean, just to answer Carl's last point, yeah, you're absolutely right in everything you say, and Black Wall Street media is still in its infancy, and we do have a website that will be coming soon, and it's right now it's just me and Diane running Black Wall Street Media, and Diane has many other things and businesses to run as well, and I have a day job, so it is very difficult to keep on top of all the social media. But you're absolutely right, and you know, this alliances with people like yourselves, I want us to work towards, because that's what Black Wall Street Media is about. It's about taking everyone who's working in silos and building a machine that can give us leverage in a global stage, you know, because we've seen the power of media and what people like Rupert Murdoch can do. Well, let's have our own machine that's just as powerful, so we're not selling our culture and our brains and everything else to the mass, the mainstream media. We need to own it and keep it, harness it, and profit from it in terms of putting it back into our community to uplift our community, educate our community, and change the narrative, you know? So that's my vision. And I know you share that vision as well, Carl, and everyone else here. And, you know, I might not see the finished article in my lifetime, but I'm certainly going to do my damnedest with Diane and yourselves to make sure that we lay a strong foundation for the generations to follow. So, you know, I agree with everything you say, Carl, and I do have a strategy, but it's important that I don't rush it.
Let's talk.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Sean. That was fantastic, really, really fantastic, particularly in terms of us sharing and protecting our cultural capital, essentially, is what you're saying, and really just protecting our intellectual property as well as a community, which again is very much on the note of ownership. Diane, would you like to take the last word before we move into the Q&A?
Well, I think Sean said it very eloquently. It really is about us just owning our own stories, owning our own platforms, owning our own data, owning our own strategies, owning our own wealth, you know, because let's be honest, we need that wealth to put back into our community, and we can only do that by supporting one another. And I mean, I've been around a long time. I've been in places, had these same conversations so many times. And it's not, you know, I really hate being negative in any way, but that's the reality. I've had them so many times. I remember when we had a meeting and people who had run business, I run multiple businesses globally, and we all to come together and put all the money in as a pot to support Black businesses. And then the division came, and again we went off into silos. So I can only hope, like Sean in my generation, that, you know, let's really come together. It's not about egos, because that's where we go wrong. I don't care. I don't need to be called the managing director or whatever. Let's be a part of something positive for change for the next generation. You know, I work with a lot of young people who are doing some remarkable stuff, you know, and we need to keep passing on that knowledge, that information, that wisdom, share how to navigate. And it is about navigating and pivoting in this really confusing world, especially social media. But let's do it together. And that's to me what our on code is. It's that
100.
internally, collectively, culturally, it's ours. Own it. You know, we need to believe it. We need to believe it. You know. So.
Absolutely. And what a note to really finish the questions on, Diane. And I love the heart and the spirit behind that final note that you share. And thank you everyone for your comments. That does bring us to the end of today's meeting.